Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Aziz unveiled Malaysia's largest budget in its history to arrest the economic downturn and protect livelihoods as the COVID-19 pandemic shows no signs of slowing down. Here are the economic highlights of Budget 2021 before we go into some of the key takeaways. Putrajaya is earmarking 322.5 billion ringgit for 2021 spending, up 2.5% from a revised 2020 allocation of 314.7 billion. 236.5 billion will be set aside for operating expenditure, while 69 billion will go towards development spending. Meanwhile, national debt is expected to inch up further to hit 61% of GDP, up from 60.7% of GDP in 2020, while fiscal deficit is expected to hit 5.4% of GDP after widening to a record 6% of GDP this year. Revenue is expected to increase to 236.9 billion, a slight hike of about 4% from 227.3 billion last year. Budget 2021, combined with the stimulus packages previously announced, is expected to help the economy grow 6.5 to 7.5% in 2021 after shrinking 4.5% this year. Domestic demand is projected to grow by 6.9%, a recovery from the 3% decline in 2020. Inflation is seen stabilizing at 2.5% after 2020's deflation, while the jobless rate is expected to fall to 3.5% from 4.2% this year. First up, to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, the government proposed to add 20 billion ringgit to the COVID-19 fund, increasing its size to 65 billion. This is to fund the Kita Prihatin stimulus package, additional assistance for Malaysians, the needs of the country's frontliners, and vaccine procurement. 1 billion will also be set aside to curb the spread of COVID-19, which is now in its third wave. Malaysia posted its highest daily tally today with 1,755 new infections with 2 new deaths. Of the 1 billion, 475 million will be reserved for MOH to purchase reagents, testing kits and consumables, while 318 million will be allocated to provide PPEs and hand sanitizers for frontliners. The rest will go to the National Disaster Management Agency and to procure equipment and prepare health facilities. Meanwhile, Malaysia's top 4 glove manufacturers, Top Glove Corp, Hartalega Holdings, Supermax Corp and Kosan Rubber Industries have agreed to collectively contribute 400 million to help combat the outbreak. Putrajaya has also pledged to strengthen MOH's offtake agreement program to attract investments into Malaysia and potential vaccine production in the future. It will also provide a one-off 500 ringgit token to MOH frontliners. COVID-19 aside, Putrajaya will expand the scope of the 1,000 ringgit tax relief to medical expenses covering vaccinations for pneumococcal diseases and influenza. It will up the tax relief limit on medical expenses for self, spouse and child for serious diseases, as well as for special needs and parental care to 8,000 ringgit. 24 million will go towards strengthening mental health, violence and injury prevention and substance abuse programs. As expected, Budget 2021 contains several measures designed to bubble wrap the country's most vulnerable from the worst of COVID-19's assault on the economy. The first, Employees Provident Fund members can now withdraw up to 500 ringgit per month from account 1 or 6,000 for 12 months starting January 2021. According to the Finance Minister, this is to assist EPF members that have lost their jobs. He says this is expected to lighten the financial burden of some 600,000 affected members and involve 4 billion ringgit. It has also reduced rates for individual income tax by 1 percentage point for those earning taxable wages from 50,001 to 70,000. That is expected to benefit 1.4 million taxpayers. Tax relief for lifestyle purposes has been increased by 500 to 3,000, specifically for sports purposes, and will also cover online news subscriptions. The 3,000 tax relief contributions for private retirement schemes that were supposed to end in in 2021 has also now been extended to 2025. The government has also increased the amount of financial aid for low-income households, in addition to giving the program a name change from Bantuan Sara Hidup to Bantuan Prihatin Rakyat. Households with monthly income of less than 2,500 with one child will receive 1,200, while households with two or more children will receive 1,800 ringgit. Households with monthly income of between 2,501 and 4,000 with one child will receive aid of up to 800, while those with two children will receive 1,200 ringgit. Among the other financial safety net measures include one for borrowers, whether individuals or micro-enterprises, that have trouble honouring their loans. They will be able to apply to either postpone installments for up to 3 months or reduce the monthly installment by 50% for a period of 6 months. Finally, to encourage more people to own a home, Budget 2021 has proposed a full stamp duty exemption for the purchase of a first house worth up to 500,000 ringgit. The exemption will also be extended to rescue contractors and original buyers of abandoned houses for another 5 years. The government is setting aside 3.7 billion ringgit to create 500,000 jobs via the Jana Kerja scheme, which will include skills development and retraining programs. It also announced an allocation of 2 billion to continue SOCSO's Penjana Kerjaya program and 1.5 billion ringgit to extend wage subsidy programs by another 3 months. Employers who hire senior citizens will enjoy tax relief, while a 1,000 ringgit monthly incentive will be given to those who employ fresh graduates for apprenticeship programs. Meanwhile, 150 million will go towards extending SOCSO's job search allowance for 3 months. Also proposed is a new 700 million ringgit initiative called MyStep, which will provide 50,000 jobs on a contractual basis in the public sector and government-linked companies. Zafrul also announced an allocation of 50 million to reskill and relocate 8,000 airline employees, as well as the creation of 500 jobs for Orang Asli and local communities to work as tour guides in all national parks. Special 1,000 ringgit grants will also be made available for traders, taxi drivers, e-hailing drivers and tour guides in Sabah. As for companies in the tourism sector, they will be exempted from the Human Resource Development Fund levy for 6 months starting January 1st next year. The government will also allocate 150 million ringgit for training programs and assistance for 100,000 entrepreneurs. The government says it remains committed to rolling out transport infrastructure projects, allocating a total of 15 billion for the Pan Borneo Highway, the Gemas Johor Bahru double tracking project, and the first phase of the Klang Valley double tracking rail. Other key projects will also be continued, such as the rapid transit system link from Johor Bahru to Woodlands, Singapore, and MRT3 in the Klang Valley. According to Zafrul, Putrajaya also plans to go ahead with the Kuala Lumpur-Singapore high-speed rail project, subject, of course, to further discussions with Singapore. He also announced 7 other projects worth 3.8 billion ringgit. 2.7 billion will be channeled to infrastructure improvement projects. Meanwhile, 5.1 billion will go to Sabah and 4.5 billion to Sarawak to build infrastructure and health and education facilities. Another major focus of Budget 2021 is digital connectivity. For one, the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission will allocate 7.4 billion to build and upgrade broadband services in 2021 and 2022. The government is also setting aside 1.5 billion for the Jaringan Prihatin program, which will provide eligible individuals in the B40 segment telco credits worth 180 ringgit. Telco companies will also be providing benefits including free data worth 1.5 billion ringgit. Meanwhile, the government will allocate 500 million to ensure the connectivity at 430 schools.